Okay, so I think it's a pretty commonly known fact that Bahubali is heavily inspired by The Lion King. Bhalal Deva is Scar, Mahendra Bahubali is Simba, Avantika is Nala, and Amrendra Bahubali is Mufasa. And all of this is bolstered by Rajamouli's Sight and South Top 10 list, which has Lion King as one of his favorite movies. And don't get me wrong, Bahubali is an exceptionally written story that brought something new entirely for Indian audiences for the first time, which I kind of got reminded again while watching Brahmastra more than anything. Because these are two movies that use a story structure that is very prevalent in American movies such as The Lion King, but not so common in Indian movies, which is a technique called the hero's journey. In 1949, an author named Joseph Campbell released a book named The Hero with a Thousand Faces, which Campbell had written after reading many mythological narratives from around the world, which included Ramayana, and noticed how these thousands of years old myths had the same story structure, which he identified and distilled into what's known today as the hero's journey. A structure which became the first direct huge inspiration for none other than George Lucas in making Luke Skywalker's character, and eventually made its way to becoming the guideline for writing The Lion King. The story structure of Bahubali and Brahmastra is classical. There's as much comparison with The Lion King as there is with Bahubali and Ramayana. Because according to Joseph Campbell, there are certain elements that the human subconscious longs for in stories, and the hero's journey structure helps scratch that itch the most. So I think it's a good time to take a look at the hero's journey and why we might be seeing more movies using the hero's journey in the future. So let's start with part 1. The normal and the special world. The normal world is the place the hero exists in. It's their safe space and the place they're familiar with, and which they don't often venture out of. For Bahubali, it's the land underneath the waterfall, and for Shiva, it's his orphanage. There exists a special world outside of the ordinary world where the adventure lies. The hero can either have a yearning to leave his ordinary world and go on an adventure, but aren't able to like Bahubali, or they can be reluctant due to past trauma like Shiva. This is where part 2 comes up. Call to adventure and refusal. At the beginning of the story, the hero often receives a piece of information or an object that shakes his world up and finally gives him a reason or motivation to leave his ordinary world. For Bahubali, it's when this mask comes falling down and tells him that the girl of his dreams is at the top of the waterfall in the special world, and for Shiva, it's the visions that force him to leave his normal world to save the life of a man he sees in his visions. But it's often not that easy. The first call to adventure is often met with refusal by the hero, either by intrinsic insecurities or by extrinsic forces. In the case of Bahubali, he must give up on his desire to climb the waterfall because his mother forces him to stay in the known world for his safety. Answering the call to adventure is, however, not that easy. The hero always encounters what is called the threshold. This is a line between the ordinary and the special world, and crossing this line is not that easy and requires a lot of effort. Bahubali constantly fails to jump across the gap in the waterfall, which is his threshold, and Shiva must venture out a huge distance to find Brahmansh. This is where the mentor comes in. The hero at this point often receives supernatural aid in the form of a mentor. The mentor can often be a guide or a protector who helps the hero with information or motivation to finally cross the threshold and also show the hero their path forward. There can be multiple mentors in the hero's journey. A first mentor to guide the way and a second mentor to show the hero their power. Along the way, the hero meets allies, enemies, and tests that show their character and test the limit of their power. That is, until the mentor guides them to the innermost cave. The innermost cave can either be a real place or an internal struggle where the greatest challenge lies for the hero of the story. For Bahubali, it is in Maheshmati where Devasena lies captured, who he must free to get what he really wants, which is Avantika. And for Shiva, it is the knowledge of what happened to his parents, which is his internal struggle to understand who he really is. The earlier feelings to refuse the call of adventure can bubble up again for the hero as they feel overwhelmed. Which brings us to part 7, Ordeal. This is the greatest challenge for the hero at this point in the story, and it has to change the hero permanently by drawing upon all the hero's skills so the hero can share his former self and be reborn as someone new that can be up to the challenge that might come ahead. This ordeal takes very different forms in both the movies. In Brahmastra, it is a training montage where Shiva learns to use his powers, but in Bahubali, it is the act of breaking Devasena out finally that acts as his ordeal, which leads to Bahubali seizing the sword. Seizing the sword, also known as apotheosis, is one of the biggest moments in the story. It is often seen in superhero movies when the hero finally reaches his maximum power and has the confidence, knowledge, or ability to defeat the villain, such as learning the ability to control the element of fire or gaining the knowledge of who the hero is and what he must fight for. This begins the return to ordinary world. The hero must recommit to returning to the ordinary world with the gift he has received. Bahubali must return to Maheshmati with the knowledge that he is the lost heir to the throne and take it back, and Shiva must try to find out the truth about his parents now that he has mastered his powers. But the way back isn't that easy. The hero must face one last battle in the form of resurrection. This is the part where the greatest threat that poses as the danger to the hero's world must be eliminated. To reclaim Maheshmati and protect its people, Bahubali must defeat Bhalal Deva, and Shiva must defeat Junoon to protect the world from the power of Brahmastra. By the end of this fight, the hero often emerges reborn after a moment of certain defeat and gives one last final push after his rebirth to defeat the final enemy and emerge victorious. The victory propels the hero into the final two steps of the hero's journey, the return and gift of the elixir. After the final enemy has been defeated, the hero must now return to the ordinary world with a gift that helps make the world a better place. The elixir can be an object like Brahmastra, or the wisdom and knowledge that the hero now possesses, like Bahubali's knowledge of how he must treat his subjects like his father. At the end of the hero's journey, the world has been saved from certain doom. The people living in it better off, and the hero a much wiser and more powerful person before the start of this journey. This form of storytelling has been a staple of many of the most successful comic book and animated movies in the West for a long time, and it makes for some of the most satisfying storytelling there is. So why has this been missing from Indian cinema for such a long time? Well, for one, the movies that depict a hero's journey are often fantasy movies that require a lot of CGI, and India has only had the budget to make those kind of movies in the last few years. But now as we are moving to tentpole high-budget movies post-pandemic, I think we are going to see a lot more of the hero's journey movies. So I think it is worth taking a look at this type of story structure and the movies that might have started off a new phase of Indian cinema.